In 2015, I wrote this article about how Netflix usually has racist and sometimes bogus movie descriptions. At that time, Netflix had a movie called Girlhood. It was a French film by Celine Sciamma, which is about a young girl who is kicked out of school and tries to find herself by hanging with a clique that steals and gets into fights, and she considers getting married but then doesn't do that. And then she considers selling drugs and realizes she doesn't want to do that either. And eventually she goes off on her own path. Maybe sort of like the ending of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but without the whole jumping off a cliff thing. But the movie description says that a disillusioned young girl drops out of school and joins a gang. And after watching the movie, I went back and read the description again, and I thought to myself, that's not the movie that I just watched. She didn't drop out of school, she was kicked out. Her teacher literally tells her that you need to leave because your grades are too low. She begs to stay in school and is kicked out anyway. Netflix description of this movie uses the word gang, and she at no point ever joins a gang. And it was disturbing to me because a movie like Mean Girls literally has a clique of girls, the Plastics, but we never refer to the Plastics as a gang. We wouldn't say that Regina George is a gang member, even though she incites a school-wide riot amongst all the girls. In the movie Heathers, Veronica and JD team up to murder all the popular kids that they don't like. And yet and still, we don't call them a gang. They're just a team of misfits. Netflix has another movie called Honey Trap, which is also about a young girl trying to find herself, and she gets entangled with this guy who's very abusive to her. He cheats on her, abuses her, he's mean to her. He manipulates her into setting up her best friend so that him and his friends can beat him to death and stab him. And yet the movie description says that she gets caught up in gang activity, but it's not a gang. It's an abusive relationship that went way too far. Whereas a movie like Mean Creek, where we have a group of kids who get together and trick their bully so that they can murder him, are just a group of kids getting revenge. We don't call them a gang because they killed somebody, but is it because they're white kids? Anytime a group of white kids is doing something, they're misfits or they're a clique. But if it's a group of black girls, it's a gang? I was really confused. It made me feel like, does Netflix even watch these movies before they write the descriptions? Who writes these descriptions, by the way? Does that person watch the movie? Because I feel like sometimes the descriptions are so inaccurate that they just don't even make sense. So when Cuties hit the scene a couple of weeks ago and the trailer was out and it showed some 11-year-old girls twerking, and the movie description on Netflix said that a girl joins a twerking dance group, I thought to myself, oh, this must be another one of those times where Netflix wrote a really bogus description without having watched the film first. Well, actually, Netflix wrote a really accurate description, and the one that they changed it to is the bogus one. Cuties is written and directed by Mamare Ducare. I don't know what her name is. It's very French, and I can't pronounce it, so I'm just going to call her Ducare. Ducare wrote and directed this film, which she says in an interview is about
how to become a woman in our society. It's a story of Amy, 11 years old little girl, who meets a group of dancers called Cuties, and fascinated, she's gonna start a very sensual dance to join their bond and at the same time escape dysfunction, family dysfunction.
Upon viewing the film for myself, that was not my takeaway. This movie is disgusting and vile. I really wanted to support a black female filmmaker. I was excited She's French. She's pretty. I was like, hey, I want to support this woman's film. But I am extremely disappointed by what I saw on my television screen. This movie is supposed to be about a young girl trying to figure out how she's supposed to grow up. Should she follow the strict religious regimen of her family, or should she go off and essentially be I mean, there's no in between. It's like you can be modest and cover yourself up and learn to cook, or you can wear tiny, tiny outfits and twerk in the streets. Pick one, ladies. The plot of the film is we follow this young girl, Amy, who has just moved into a new place with her mom and her younger brother. And she sees that her mom is setting up a room. Well, it turns out that her father has taken a second wife. This causes a lot of controversy for the mother because on the outside, she's trying to project this air of confidence, like she's not jealous and she's unbothered by the fact that her husband is taking a second wife. But we see that she's clearly bothered by this. And Amy sees this too. So she wants to rebel against this tradition. Obviously, she doesn't want to grow up to be like her mom and marry a man who's going to eventually take a second wife. So she decides, well, I'm going to rebel and I'm going to join these dancer girls. And the dancing is actually pretty innocent until Amy joins the group, because Amy has been watching really sexually suggestive music videos on YouTube or something. And the girls are wearing tiny, tiny shorts and their butts are in the cameras. But the girls, or I should say the women that she's watching perform in these videos, seem to be of age. Amy, the character, is 11 years old. The actress playing her is 12. The other girls are around the same age. Now, it's just very disturbing to me that a filmmaker would want to show that growing up in this westernized way of becoming a woman is bad by sexualizing children. I feel that any reasonable person knows that sexualizing children is wrong. So the fact that she has these little girls wearing tiny outfits and shaking it in slow motion for the camera, very, very up close, was not only vile, but just downright inappropriate. I mean, I didn't need to see that. I was hoping for a coming-of-age film similar to Girlhood, where Celine Sciamma actually observed girls and talked to them and wanted to get to know them. And she did see them dancing, and there's points in the movie where they are dancing, but they're dancing for themselves. And they're dancing in a way that is very normal for teenage girls to dance. And to see these preteen girls just hardcore shaking it as if I was watching the WAP video was just vile. It was just vile. I cringed so many times in this movie. There is a scene in the movie where Amy and her friends break into this laser tag place and they pretend to shoot each other with finger guns until security finds them. And the way they try to get out of it is that they accuse the security guard of being a perv, and then Amy starts twerking for him. Eventually, the security guards let them go, but for a moment, we get this male gaze of how the security guard is looking at this young child, and it's just disgusting. There's another scene in the movie where Amy steals the phone from her older brother, and when he catches her with it, he takes it back. And she's fighting with him over the phone. He tells her, no, I'm not going to give it to you. So what does Amy do? Amy starts taking her clothes off. And her brother's like, what are you doing? That's not even the worst part. The worst part is she snatches his phone and runs to the bathroom. takes a picture of her hoo-ha and then uploads it to the internet. And then everybody at school sees it, and she's just completely unbothered by this. I don't understand why this movie had to exist. When the director talks about her vision in her interviews, it makes sense. Without having seen the film and just hearing her talk about it, I'm like, oh yes, I understand that. I get that. I agree with some of the stuff she says. But then watching her movie just felt like a bunch of disjointed ideas that she tried to stitch together to say something, but I really feel like she missed the mark. There are moments in the film that I thought were promising, but I felt like it wasn't enough, and the movie just didn't explore those things enough. She receives a dress from her father to wear at her father's wedding to the second wife. And every time she looks in the closet at the dress, it seems to be moving. There's one point where the dress seems to be breathing. When she gets her period, the dress bleeds all over the closet. And I thought that was like a nice way to represent the changes going on with her as a metaphor. But I just feel like that idea wasn't explored enough, and maybe the movie could have had more symbols and metaphors like that. But just seeing a little girl shake her rear close up in a camera in slow motion is just not my idea of a good time. The final scene of the film, when the cuties are at their dance competition, they're doing a very overly sexualized dance, and the audience at the dance competition are cringing. They're booing, they're giving thumbs downs, they're completely disturbed by this dance. Me, as an audience member at home, is feeling the same way. I'm completely disgusted by this dance that these girls are doing. And maybe that was the point, but also I feel like any reasonable person already knows that that's bad and wrong and inappropriate and disgusting. And we don't need that thrown in our faces again. It just felt really redundant. It felt condescending, like, you know, this is bad and we shouldn't be doing this. And hey, I agree, we shouldn't be doing that. And not even for a movie. The movie's just, it's awful. It's really, really awful. I would not recommend this movie. This is not a movie that I'm going to go back to and you know, remember with fond memories. This is not a feel-good movie that, you know, leaves you with the warm and fuzzies. It left me feeling sick. I really hope that in the future Ducouré can make like better films that say something, because this movie is awful. 10 out of 10, don't recommend it. I would give it 0 stars. I would give it negative stars. I would take stars away. This film is just so much worse than the internet even thought it was going to be. Now I understand why there was petitions. Everything makes sense. So, this isn't the way I was going to plan to make this video, but this is what it is. So, I will see you in the next one. Bye.